Hello! In this video I will be showing you how to 3D print your own Runescape character using the Runescape model viewer. So in this example I will be using the Cerenic armor. It's the only coolish armor I could find in my bank. And what you'll need to do is head over to the photo booth near Valador. So let's head over there now. So here we are at the photo booth. So all you do is go in and take your picture. You'll not be able to take another picture for another 2 hours. So if you don't have the gear that you want to be wearing, either come back in another 2 hours and take another photo, or change it now and take a photo in a bit. And that's all done. So next I'll go and show you how to find this model and download it on Runescape. It will take a little bit of time. It takes a few minutes usually before it can access the files, but it doesn't take too long. So if you head over to runescape.org, you should come to a page like this, and if you go up to the top right, you can go to Model Viewer. There are a number of things you can download, so you can download individual items, NPCs if you search for them, locations, models of equipment and gear that's possibly lying on the ground, various materials, bits of map, sort of things. But what we're going to use is the player settings. So I'm going to input my name, and if I search for it, it's picked up that I have Elite Cerenic Mask, the Hallberg and the chaps, and the rest of the information about me. And on the main screen you can see me. So you can pan around with the right mouse button, rotate with the left mouse button, zoom in and out by holding the middle mouse button, or using the scroll wheel. Then if we go, I'm happy with this. Sometimes you might find that certain models are a bit bugged out, particularly some of the older models. It doesn't import particularly well, and there may be stretch geometry and all that kind of things. But this model seems to be okay. I will say that this model is a bit complicated. There's all the spikes and obviously these funny tendril things coming off of it. So this will be a very difficult model to 3D print. So it won't look quite like this, depending what 3D printing method you have. But if we go to export, you have 3 types: an image, that will just be a PNG file, STL, which is your standard mesh that you'll typically find with 3D printing, and a GLTF, which includes all the color and texture data, as well as some of the rigging and that sort of thing. So I will download both the GLTF and the STL, although we will mostly be using the STL due to it being simpler to start with. If you're wanting to do other purposes such as animation or renderings, then GLTF is probably a better place to start. All you do is click on it and then save, and you can save it somewhere local. So in this case, let's save it to the desktop and give it a name of Cerenic. That will be a GLB file, and same with the STL file. Cerenic. So now that you've downloaded the STL file, you could just go and import it straight into your slicer. Let's find it. There we go. Sure. And if I rotate this to stand it up, highlight it so that it's a bit more visible. Now, there's some things you will probably immediately see, so some of the symbols you cannot see, such as that sort of SL thing, they're not included, they're not part of the mesh. And if we go to the slicer, let's remove the supports, and let's make it high detail if we can. It's going to fail on a lot of those spikes. It's going to fail with all those tendrils, and any spikes around the I don't know what's going on with the greaves. Looks like his fingers are snapped off as well a little bit. Maybe we can try repairing it. I don't know how well it'll do. Not much better. So with most models, if you take them from the model viewer straight out of Runescape, you'll find that they're not in a state that's ready to be 3D printed. If it's quite simple, you might be able to get away with it, but if it's more complicated, or if it's just poorly designed mesh, it's not going to 3D print straight from the model viewer, and you'll have to clean it up yourself to get into a usable state. For that, I tend to use Blender. It's software that I'm familiar with. There are other softwares that you can use, or just repair software that might get you close to what you want. So I will go show you that. So here we are in Blender, and if we go to File and Import, you can download the GLTF file or the STL. I'll quickly show you the GLTF file first, show you what that's like. So it's all nice and smooth compared to the STL that we had. It's made up of all the individual components. This will be similar across the STL as well. If I go into the render options, as you can see, we have model data with all the colour, and if we open up the node, we can see that there's an armature with different bits and pieces of bones and various bits, and just lots of information stored with it. So this will be a little bit more complicated than what we need to use. So if I go to File, Import, and go to STL, as you can see, he's lying on the ground, so I'll turn him upright. So as you can see, this is missing the colour information. It also seems like it's not split up, it's a single mesh. But if I select linked areas, it isn't completely one mesh. So the GLTF has split it into each of the components. So for example, I can hide his head, apparently, which is in two parts, whereas the STL is in one piece. So if I go, let's unhide that. We delete that, as you can see now, it's got all these bones and it's made him supersized. Not really what I wanted. Delete all that. So all we have is just our STL. Let's go back into non-shaded mode. So if I go to, what generally happens with 3D printing is things that are not a manifold mesh will likely fail. So in Blender I can go to select all by trait and go to non-manifold. And this highlights a lot of problem areas. So if I if it will let me just show this one piece, I'll move this back in a sec. You can see that this is just a plane into a nice shape. So this is how it does the sort of decals on the armour where you've got your different colours. So for example, if I you sort of got that S cut into it, but it's not actually cut into it. So what we might want to go and do is we might want to extrude it, select all the length, make it into its own part, and then perform a boolean. So if I go to modifier, boolean difference, and I could subtract it or I could add it. In this case, let's subtract it, and apply. And then if I hide that, it seems like I've just cut straight through because it's, again, it's not uniform mesh, so it's not fully repaired. So in this case, I've just cut a hole straight into that. Let's undo all that. And instead, maybe if we did union, apply, and hide that. We now have a slightly embossed area that we could then pick up if we wanted to then paint the figure. Otherwise, this won't be showing up on your model, and you'll just have to do it by eye, essentially. So I'm going to go through and show a couple of other methods of points that you'll need to fix. So if I select this spike, I will separate it out into its own piece. And the reason it's not manifold is there's just an empty hole at the end of the part. So if I close that up, and then I go to select not by non-manifold, if I make it into a wireframe, non-manifold, nothing's highlighting now on this piece, so this bit is all okay. But obviously I don't want it sticking out on its own, I want it to incorporate it into the rest of the mesh. So I can now select that plane on the inside. Sometimes it's a little bit close, it might be having a 0 thickness geometry, so I'm just going to drag that slightly inside the model, and then when I go to boolean it and union it together, it's much more likely to work. Now I can remove that, and I have a linked up spike. So one of the annoying things about this particular model is there are a lot of spikes, which means I have to go and do that for all of the spikes. The rest of the model is actually not too bad. We do have those strange floating greave pieces which are not attached to the legs at all, which is possibly why those failed. The fingers could have failed just because they got too thin. What you'll typically find is that when you're 3D printing, the ankles and the wrists are particularly thin, and if you're wanting to 3D print it, it's a good idea to thicken those up. Obviously, if you are more comfortable with what you're doing, you can manipulate parts of the mesh to put it into different poses. So if I select that arm, for instance, and then proportional editing, why is it so big? I don't want it that big. There we go. I want it quite small, really. Now I can sort of rotate the arm around, or I can just unproportional and do it about a little bit to pose the figure how you want it. there's better ways of doing it than what I've just shown you, but that's a quick and dirty method. So yeah, and then obviously you can, depending how comfortable you are, you can add bits, remove bits, make bits more detailed. Another thing you might find is maybe you want to just use this as a starting point, and then you want to sculpt it so that it's designed with 3D printing in mind, because this is really not good geometry for 3D printing. There's lots of overhangs. If you're putting supports in here, that's likely going to break off. So in that sense, be very careful. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this up. I'll do a very basic cleanup, and I'll do a time lapse of it, and then I will put it onto my printer to go for it, and show you the result. Okay, so I think that is now a completely repaired mesh. So when I go to non-manifold, this is all one complete model, and if I click L, it highlights everything. So I'm going to pretty much print this as is. My printer will struggle with the spikes. Some will inevitably break off. I don't hold out much hope for the tendrils. You would have a better chance if you have an SLA printer, which is a resin printer. I have an FDM ones, which yeah, definitely not ideal. I would have to print this reasonably large size to go and get this to come out correctly. I will probably add my own base on here, so if I import I think I have a base somewhere. Can I get a preview? Don't think I can. I would quite like a preview. Oh, mile away. And it's coming absolutely down. Yeah, it's actually no good size. Oh, it's jumping all over the place. Right. Object, set origin, origin geometry. There we go, now I can move it up better. Let's stick that underneath here. Let's scale it down a bit. Make sure it is intersecting with the model slightly, and then boolean it together and apply. Right, now this is all good to export, so if I go File, Export, STL, and I'll call this Runic 2 because it's now a repaired one. And then I will go into my slicer. Okay, so I have my model in my slicer. I have scaled it up so it is quite large. It's currently saying it's going to take 14 hours, which is a bit ridiculous, so I'll maybe scale it back down a bit. I'm ideally looking for about an 8-hour print, I think. Maybe a bit more when I add on the amount of supports that I need. So that is an absolute load of supports. I will also, well actually I've made the base quite thin now, so I don't need to change the infill too much. But it's going to be an absolute nightmare to remove the supports. Now in Prusa, the Prusa Slicer 2.6 Alpha, you can get tree supports. I haven't tried those yet, I have not upgraded to 2.6 Alpha. I am very much looking forward to it. I have attempted tree supports through Mesh Room before with mixed results. Sometimes they work, sometimes they fail and cause the rest of the print to fail. So yeah. I will set the infill to 10%. I don't think it will make that much difference. Basically, I think I have quite high parameters. Go to my print settings. I need 3 parameters. If I make that 4 parameters, and then maybe I will reduce the infill further to 5%. And maybe that will work. A quick run through of what it looked like. So at this point I can probably see which bits will already fail. So far so good on the legs. There's some sort of spike. Oh wait, no, those are the fingers. Fingers might struggle. There's a lot of support underneath them. So yeah, they could be tricky. But yeah, the arms at this point are pretty much solid infill. for the spikes, it might be alright, but again they're probably going to break off when I remove the support material. And then obviously same with the tendril bits, but we'll see what we end up with. I will print this overnight and see what we end up with. And this is how it came out. A lot of support, so it will need a lot of delicate cleanup. After cleaning it up, this is how it looks from the front, and this is how it looks from the back. The area at the back of the helmet was very delicate, and there's still quite a lot of mess in there. And finally, after giving it a quick coat of primer, this is how it looks from the front, the side, the back. As you can see, I've made it a little bit better on that back of the helmet, and that's where I think I'll leave it. I will not paint it for this video. I haven't decided what colours I want to go and paint it, and maybe I will let anyone who wants it have one, and then I can paint it in the colours that they want. So thank you for watching. I hope this helps you create your own characters. If you have a resin printer, you'll get much better results than this FDM printer, and depending on the scale that you want it, depends how much detail you can get out of it. So yeah, thank you for watching. I hope this helps.